I'm 50 years old. Been around long enough to know that most storms pass, and the ones that don't, you just learn to walk through 'em. I'm not flashy. I don't throw tantrums. I wear my age like a good leather jacket, weathered, broken in, and tougher than it looks. I built myself from the ground up. My hands know work. Real work. Not hashtags and digital rage, but calluses, sweat, and results you can see. I've run a small construction business for 27 years. Built homes, repaired churches, even restored a Civil War-era barn. I've kept people safe, warm, dry. Things that matter. My name? Doesn't matter. Not yet. You'll get to know me by what I've endured and how I came through it without crawling. I was married to a woman named Laura. 23 years. We had a good run once. Before the hashtags. Before she swapped real life for digital validation and feminism became not a belief, but a performance. Laura didn't start out that way. She was smart, driven, the kind of woman who could slice through a boardroom with words sharper than any saw in my shop. That's what first drew me in. Fire, precision, elegance. She used to believe in us. But somewhere along the line, she stopped believing in partnership and started worshiping independence, the kind that looks more like resentment in a pretty coat. She got lost in online echo chambers, joined forums where every bad mood became a cause and every cause needed a villain. Guess who played the villain? Me. The husband. The dependable guy who never missed a mortgage, who picked the kids up from school, who never cheated, never wandered, never belittled. But boring, dependable men don't trend on Twitter. They don't trigger dopamine hits or sympathy threads. No, we're just furniture. Useful until someone decides they want a different aesthetic. One evening, it was a Thursday, she poured 2 glasses of wine. Cabernet. I should have known something was coming. Laura only offered wine when she had something rehearsed. She sat down across from me, all posture and poise, with that half-smile she'd picked up from the internet. I went on a date, she said, sipping slowly. I have a right to choose how I live. I'm not owned. Just like that. Like she was returning a library book. I looked at her. Really looked. And what I saw wasn't the woman I married. It was someone trying very hard to convince herself that betrayal was bravery, that selfishness was a virtue, that hurting someone who loved you made you powerful. I didn't yell. Didn't ask who, or where, or if it was physical. I didn't clench my fists or raise my voice. I just nodded. Then I smiled. A small, deliberate kind of smile. The kind that says, you're not the only one who's been thinking. Interesting, I said, because I went on a date too. She blinked. With a woman, I continued, who reminded me what it feels like to be admired. Someone who laughs without sarcasm. Who doesn't treat a man's patience like a weakness. She's 29. Works in publishing. Gorgeous. Kind. Uncomplicated. The wine glass paused halfway to her lips. You're lying, Laura snapped. No, I said, looking her dead in the eye. I'm just not broadcasting it for applause. Her face twisted. Whatever script she had written in her head didn't include this scene. She expected a meltdown. Tears. Maybe a slammed door. Not this. Not a calm man flipping her power play on its back without even flinching. You're disgusting, she hissed. You're a pig. But she wasn't angry because I dated. She was angry because I beat her to it. Because in her mind, she was the enlightened one. The evolved one. And me? I was supposed to grovel. Beg for forgiveness. Apologize for being dependable. Instead, I just leaned back in my chair and took a sip of the wine. You wanted freedom, I said. Now you've got it. She screamed. Actually screamed. Not the wounded kind. The furious, exposed kind. The kind of scream that comes from losing control. And me? I just sat there. Silent. Steady. Unshaken. Because I knew the difference between revenge and clarity. And this wasn't revenge. Not yet. She didn't sleep that night. I did. Like a man who just handed back a mask he never wanted to wear. But Laura? She paced. She fumed. She lit up her phone like it was a beacon in the dark, a lifeline to her digital cheering squad. I could hear the typing from down the hall, furious little bursts of manic tapping. Somewhere between 1 and 2 a.m., I caught a whiff of burnt toast and irony. She'd been so desperate to stay in control of the narrative, she'd forgotten I was the one holding the silence. By breakfast, the cavalry had arrived. Her Twitter community, a swarm of women with usernames like @WokePhoenix and @SmashTheThrone, were already firing off tweets on her behalf. Another woman trapped in a misogynistic marriage, one post read, retweeted over 1,000 times. Her husband is controlling her with emotional manipulation. Classic male power play. Controlling? The same man who spent 2 decades building a life around her schedule, who skipped a promotion because it would have meant uprooting our son from his favorite school. Funny how a lie becomes gospel once it's packaged in outrage. She threw her phone on the table and looked at me like I was supposed to flinch. "You're exactly what's wrong with men today," she spat. "You pretend to be supportive, but you're just another cog in the patriarchy." I didn't respond. "You can't handle a woman choosing her own path," she said, voice rising. "I make one choice for myself, and suddenly you're threatened." "I'm not threatened," I replied quietly, not even looking up from my coffee. "I'm just done pretending this is something it's not." She stood there, stunned, as if the lack of reaction was somehow worse than if I'd thrown a chair through the window. Then came the buzz of her phone again. More tweets. More support. Some of these women had known her for years. Most of them had never met her. Not one of them had met me. And yet, overnight, I was labeled a tyrant in steel-toed boots. A villain in a flannel shirt. #toxic masculinity was trending. Apparently, I was the case study. And still, I said nothing. Because what she didn't know, was that while they were screaming into the void for validation, I was building something. Not out of rage. Out of resolve. I'd seen this coming for years. The shift in her. It wasn't sudden. It was slow, like mold under paint. At first, it was just a podcast or two. Then some social media groups. Then came the language. Rehearsed, sharp, borrowed from activists who lived for conflict. I remember the first time she said, "Marriage is a tool of male dominance." It was a Tuesday. We were folding laundry. I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. She used to be grounded. Practical. She balanced our checkbook down to the penny and never let emotion lead a discussion. But somewhere along the line, her reflection in the mirror started arguing with her own shadow. She no longer saw a partner. She saw a symbol of oppression standing in her kitchen. That's what ideology does when it rots from the inside out. It turns disagreement into threat, marriage into prison, husband into enemy. But I wasn't going to argue with ghosts. So I stayed quiet. I let her tweet. I let them howl. And while they howled, I made phone calls. I updated passwords. I revisited our prenup, the one she insisted on 2 decades ago when I had more to lose than she did. I dusted it off like an old blueprint and smiled. Because the thing about structures? I know how they're built, and I know exactly how to dismantle them. The thing about building things for a living, houses, fences, lives, is you know exactly where the weak points are. That's why, after the digital mob had their fun and Laura finished her third monologue about structural oppression, I took a little drive. Nothing dramatic. Just a trip downtown. The old brick building with the creaky elevator and the kind of law office that smells like oak, copy toner, and patience. I sat across from Harold Bishop, my attorney for the past 15 years. Harold wasn't the flashy type. No billboards. No ads on buses. Just a former Marine turned estate specialist who believed in handshakes and bulletproof contracts. The man could find a loophole in a crossword puzzle. He took one look at me and said, "You finally ready to stop fixing her leaks?" "Yeah," I said, pulling out the manila envelope. Inside, mortgage records, brokerage statements, property titles, business registrations, every dusty receipt and notarized scrap that traced the last 2 decades of our shared life. Except it wasn't so shared after all. The house, bought 5 years before she even started her little marketing blog. The retirement accounts, contributions from my business revenue, directly deposited, itemized down to the cent. The vehicles, titled solely in my name. And then, the real gem, the prenup. The prenup. Back when she was fresh out of grad school and talking about protecting her independence, she'd insisted on one. Funny how that worked out. At the time, she was worried I might someday out-earn her and hold it over her. So she demanded clauses, ironclad, notarized, and long since forgotten. And I, being the reasonable, supportive man I've always been, agreed. Now Harold flipped through it, nodding slowly. "You've got protection on everything that matters," he said, tapping the clause with his pen. "Infidelity exclusion, too." I said nothing. Just watched the gears turn. "Start the process?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "First, I want her to feel free." He gave a tight smile. "You always were a builder. Even your revenge has structure." Later that night, while she was live tweeting some TED Talk about feminine energy, I logged into our joint accounts. Quietly. Deliberately. First stop, the checking account. I moved 80% into a new account she couldn't see. Second, I canceled the joint credit card, the one she used for business dinners that somehow always ended with hotel receipts. Then, our investment account, set to view-only access. She could watch, but not touch. And finally, I opened a secure vault for my business records, just in case her newfound freedom involved trying to dig into assets that had never been hers. No rage, no threats, just clean, cold math. She didn't notice right away. She was too busy liberating herself online, retweeting threads about emotional labor and writing Instagram captions about how her healing journey had just begun. Let her have it. Let her preach to the choir. Because while she built narratives, I was building distance, boundaries. And if there's one thing I've learned from years of drafting blueprints and pouring concrete foundations, a good structure isn't about what people see. It's about what keeps standing when everything else collapses. It started with a thread. 11 tweets, each one more dramatic than the last. Laura wrote them like a script from a bad made-for-streaming drama. I finally broke free from 20 years of emotional captivity, she wrote. He never hit me, but that's not the only kind of abuse. The words toxic, gaslighting, and sexist were sprinkled to the post like seasoning. She tagged a few feminist influencers, women with bios that read like a thesis on rage and usernames like @DismantleMen and @GoddessNoChains. They responded with fire emojis, fists, and sympathy. By morning, she had thousands of likes. By noon, she had podcast invitations. By evening, there were calls to cancel me from people I'd never met. Folks with cartoon profile pictures and moral superiority dialed up to 11. They posted old photos of us, cropped ones, of course, captioned with vague warnings like, never underestimate how dangerous nice guys can be. One woman commented that my eyes looked abusive. Another said I gave off midlife Hitler energy. I didn't respond. Not to the tweets. Not to the DMs. Not even to the voicemail from an old acquaintance who said, hey man, you might want to tell your side of the story. But here's the thing. I didn't have a side to tell. I had a life to live. And I had peace to protect. The truth doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just waits. So I let them bark. Let them howl. Let them turn her manufactured suffering into a badge of honor, paraded across social media like she was Joan of Arc with a Wi-Fi signal. Because while she was performing, I was healing. And part of that healing? Her name was Rachel. She wasn't revenge. She wasn't rebound. She was breath. We met at a bookstore. Yes, they still exist. I was flipping through a book on woodworking. She was browsing poetry. We bumped into each other by the register, and I cracked a joke about how overpriced coffee has replaced the Dewey Decimal System. She laughed. Really laughed. The kind of laugh that fills a room without trying. Rachel is 32. She teaches literature at a community college. Reads more than she posts. When she asks a question, she actually listens to the answer. She doesn't treat conversation like a debate to win. She's not trying to change the world, just trying to live gently inside it. The first time we had dinner, she wore a simple blue dress and no agenda. When I asked her about her work, she told me about her students. The kid who couldn't read a paragraph last year, but now writes poems about birds. Her eyes lit up when she talked about growth. Not followers. Not likes. Just human growth. It had been so long since someone looked at me without suspicion. Without sizing me up like I was a potential oppressor. Rachel just saw a man. A man who was tired of noise. A man who wanted quiet. And in her presence, I found it. We didn't move fast. No grand declarations. No hashtags. Just good coffee, warm conversation, and the kind of laughter that doesn't end in accusation. And while Laura rallied her digital militia, I walked through parks. I took my time. I remembered what it meant to feel sunlight without dread. She tried to turn me into a villain. But villains defend themselves. I didn't. Because truth doesn't panic. It prepares. And I wasn't done preparing. Not yet. She thought I'd leave. After all the drama, the Twitter threads, the martyrdom tour, she assumed I'd quietly slink out the back door like some scorned sitcom husband clutching a duffel bag and a broken ego. She forgot one thing. I built this house. Brick by brick. Paid every cent on the mortgage. Laid the tile in the kitchen with my own hands the year our oldest graduated high school. Fixed the pipes when they froze. Rewired the damn breaker panel when she insisted on buying those pendant lights from that overpriced boutique downtown. This wasn't just a house. It was mine. So, no, I didn't pack a bag. I packed a manila envelope. It sat between us at breakfast, our usual table, only this time the silence didn't feel like tension. It felt like verdict. "What's this?" she asked, flipping open the flap with nails perfectly manicured for Instagram. "Divorce papers," I said. She blinked, realized there was no rage coming. No shouting match. No begging or bargaining. Just a printed declaration and a calm man with a half-finished cup of coffee. "You can't be serious," she said. "I've never been more." Her voice started rising. Something about how I was abandoning her, how I was taking away her future, how she devoted years of her life to this marriage, even though the last 3 years she'd barely looked me in the eye unless it was to deliver a lecture on gender roles. "You're the one who checked out," I said quietly. "And now I'm just confirming your checkout time." That's when the tantrums began. Loud. Ugly. She slammed the papers on the counter and launched into a screech about betrayal, about gaslighting, about how men like me were the reason women needed safe spaces. She used the word monster at least twice. I didn't move. Just sipped my coffee and watched the performance. She expected me to flinch. She always did. Years of getting the last word, of storming off and coming back without ever saying sorry, had trained her into thinking every blow she delivered would land. This one didn't. And when she started getting in my face, I calmly reached into my pocket, tapped the voice recorder app on my phone, and let it roll. Not for revenge. For protection. Because the kind of rage she was tapping into? It wasn't about grief. It was about control slipping through her fingers. That night, I emailed the recording to my lawyer. Just in case. She tried another tactic the next day. Sweetness. A wistful tone about the good times. About our wedding song. About all we'd been through. I let her speak. Then I reminded her she said I was controlling just last week. She didn't like that. Back to the rage. It became a cycle, pleading, blaming, insulting, then silence. But through it all, I remained still. I took walks. I read. I cooked my own meals. I let her flail in the space she thought she owned. And I didn't leave the house. Because leaving would have been an admission. And I had nothing to apologize for. This wasn't about punishing her. This was about reclaiming my space. And I was prepared to hold the line until the last shingle fell from the roof. But it wouldn't. Because I built this house. And the man who built it doesn't run. Courtrooms aren't dramatic like in movies. No soaring speeches. No slammed desks. Just cold benches, recycled air, and the sterile clatter of legal machinery grinding forward, slow but merciless. She wore white that day. Not ivory. Not cream. Stark white, like she was auditioning for sympathy. Her lawyer looked the part too. Thick glasses, oversized briefcase, the kind of rehearsed outrage you could smell from the hallway. They strutted in like crusaders, full of conviction and hashtags. I came in wearing my Sunday best. Navy blazer, pressed slacks, clean shave. Harold walked beside me, silent, unshaken, a legal scalpel in a world of plastic swords. We sat. We waited. And then the games began. Her side opened with a tirade. Emotional abuse. Patriarchal control. She read excerpts from her Twitter threads as if they were sacred texts. Called herself a survivor. Painted our 23-year marriage like a gulag with throw pillows. Her lawyer handed out screenshots. Posts. DMs. Carefully curated quotes where she claimed I stifled her spirit, undermined her feminism, controlled the finances. The judge, mid-60s, no-nonsense type, didn't blink. Harold waited patiently. Then, when it was our turn, he stood up, flipped open a simple folder, and began laying out facts. No drama. Just ledgers, receipts, and timestamps. Mortgage? My name. Paid in full, by me. Business? Started 5 years before the marriage. Investments? From pre-marriage accounts, protected under the prenup. Then he pulled out her Twitter posts, the ones where she called me trash with a toolbox, accused me of being the face of silent male violence, and bragged about starting fresh once I take half of what he owns. The courtroom got quiet. "Your Honor," Harold said, calm and surgical, "my client has not responded to these attacks publicly because he believed in protecting the dignity of his marriage, even when his wife turned it into performance art." Then he brought out the voice recording. Just one. 3 minutes of her screaming that I was a monster, that she'd burn it all down, that she deserved everything because she tolerated me this long. The judge's jaw tightened slightly. That was all. And when the gavel finally dropped, it didn't echo. But it landed heavy. The prenup held. Every clause, every condition. Ironclad. Her assets were minimal, some savings from freelance gigs, and a dwindling influencer account. No alimony. No house. No car. No stake in my business. She got what she came in with. And what she came in with fit in a sedan and a suitcase. She sat there, stunned, like someone had rewound the tape on her revolution. The white dress looked smaller now. Her posture slumped. That smug, curated expression she wore for the court photographer? Gone. I didn't smile. Not because I wasn't satisfied, believe me, I was, but because satisfaction doesn't always look like celebration. Sometimes it just looks like peace. As she gathered her things, carefully avoiding eye contact, I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and walked past her without a word. She'd spent months trying to bury me under noise. But in the end, it was silence that won. Because a storm can't break a man who's already built for it. And I had one final thing she could never cancel. My freedom. She moved out on a Wednesday. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't say anything at all. Just loaded her boxes into a borrowed crossover with peeling bumper stickers about liberation and resilience. The house was quiet when she left. Too quiet for her liking, I imagine. No audience. No applause. The apartment she rented? I looked it up once. 2-bedroom, second floor, facing a parking lot. Beige walls, popcorn ceiling. The kind of place where freedom echoes back at you in silence. She posted a video tour on her socials, called it her sanctuary of healing. Said it was empowering to be surrounded by intentional solitude. What she didn't post was the mattress on the floor, the mismatched kitchenware, or the way she taped a printed quote to the bathroom mirror that said, "You are not broken, you are rebirthing." By month 2, her posts turned louder, angrier. Still cleaning up the trauma of a patriarchal marriage, she tweeted. 20 years of silent suffering while he pretended to be decent. Don't be fooled by quiet men. They're the most dangerous. No likes. 2 retweets. One of them from an account with an anime avatar. Her Twitter circle, the self-proclaimed sisterhood, started showing cracks. First came the silence. The retweets stopped. Then one of her closest digital warriors, at Lunarain27, went dark altogether. Rumor was her husband left her after discovering she'd drained their savings on spiritual retreats and self-love merch. Another, at Hex in Heels, blocked Laura after a spat about who invented the term emotional labor. Even online, people tire of sermons. So she pivoted, launched a GoFundMe titled, "Healing Her, A Journey Back to Myself." The description read like a thesis. This campaign supports a woman reclaiming her wholeness after decades of covert emotional abuse. Funds will help with enrollment in transformative goddess workshops, trauma-informed yoga, and feminist rewilding retreats. Goal, $12,000. Raised, $276. Most of it from the same 3 names who always commented, "You're so brave," under her selfies. She posted a photo of herself holding a candle, face half in shadow, with the caption, "Some nights, the flame is all that keeps me warm." And yet, the apartment looked colder each time. Fewer cushions, blank walls, the air of someone trying to cast a spell over loneliness and call it growth. Every now and then, she still mentions me online. Never by name. Just him. Always him. The villain. The ghost. The story she still needs to feel righteous. And I let her. Because while she clings to identity like a raft in a storm, I'm on dry land. Because the truth is, she didn't lose in court. She lost the moment the applause died down and no one came to help her carry the boxes. It came on a Wednesday. Midday. No warning. A text. Not from a number I had saved, but the tone was unmistakable. You know someone long enough, you recognize their punctuation like handwriting. You destroyed my life. You always needed to be the quiet good guy while you chipped away at my worth. Men like you are exactly why feminism matters. You smile while you ruin people. No greeting. No sign-off. Just bitterness with a data plan. I read it once. Just once. Then I held my thumb over the screen, hit delete, and let it vanish like smoke from a dying match. No anger. No gloating. Just a smile. Because I'd been waiting for that moment. Not with dread, but with certainty. I knew it would come. When the Twitter crowds moved on. When the hashtags lost their heat. When the apartment got cold and the echo chamber turned inward. She wasn't reaching out for justice. She was reaching out for noise. Drama. One more round. But I had nothing left to give her. No outrage. No apology. Just quiet. I slipped my phone back in my pocket, walked out to the garage, and picked up where I'd left off sanding the edge of a handmade table I was building for Rachel's birthday. Maplewood. Clean lines. No nails, just joints and patience. Viewers, this is the end of the story. We would be very grateful for your likes, comments, subscriptions, and sharing of our stories. See you next time.